the anti-India BBC was in the news again.
The BBC is directly getting millions, maybe billions from the Chinese.
Okay, not on an Anub show. This time the matter is a bit international. British football legend and sports commentator Gary Lineker was suspended by the BBC for his anti-government tweet. India में ही नहीं, UK में भी BBC controversy में अक्सर फंस जाता है. Jokes apart, Lineker has since then been reinstated after outcry from the football world, his fans, and general people with good sense. Since the late 90s, Lineker has been hosting BBC's flagship sports show Match of the Day, among others, and is one of the highest paid BBC presenters, earning £1.35 million a year. So, what was the whole controversy all about? What did Lineker say? What was this anti-government tweet? What are BBC's social media policies? And इस सब के बीच में हमारे आदरणीय INB मिनिस्टर की क्या टिप्पणी थी? We'll answer all these questions in this episode of NL Cheat Sheet. Here is what Lineker tweeted. There is no huge influx. We take far fewer refugees than other major European countries. This is just an immeasurably cruel policy directed at the most vulnerable people in language that is not dissimilar to that used by Germany in the 30s. And I'm out of order? In this tweet, he implied that the Rishi Sunak-led UK government's controversial refugee policy is close to the language used by Nazi Germany. The background to this tweet is the UK government's Stop the Boats campaign and a new immigration bill. Under the bill, the government, led by the Conservative Party, wants to stop illegal refugees. After the tweet, Lineker was taken off air, disrupting BBC's weekend football coverage. But to be honest, there was nothing out of the ordinary in the Premier League, except Liverpool's shock defeat to Bournemouth after their 7-0 thrashing to Manchester United. But it begs the question, can a journalist or sports presenter be held accountable for his views on social media? BBC said Lineker was suspended for getting involved in political matters. This has put the focus on BBC's impartiality clause. BBC says it's committed to achieving due impartiality in all its output. The clause says it means more than a simple matter of balance. It further says it does not require absolute neutrality on every issue or detachment from fundamental democratic principles, such as the right to vote, freedom of expression, and the rule of law. How does the impartiality clause sit with the BBC's social media use policy? BBC says everyone who works for the BBC should ensure their activity on social media platforms does not compromise the perception of or undermine the impartiality and reputation of the BBC. Lineker is a freelance presenter, not an employee of the BBC, and he is not in the business of news or factual reporting. Do social media rules apply to a freelance broadcaster? This is where it gets murkier. BBC guidance says that actors, dramatists, comedians, musicians, and pundits are not subject to the requirements of impartiality on social media. So what was Lineker's mistake? It was no secret for the BBC that he supports asylum seekers, hosts refugees at his home, and expressed on air his disapproval of Qatar hosting the World Cup due to human rights violations. Here is what Lineker said in a 2021 interview to the BBC about his understanding with Tim Davie, the BBC Director General.
You can't tweet about that, or you can't tweet about
this. But when
this.
you met him, did he talk to you?
I don't think they could do that anyway. I mean, I'm my own person.
Well, they couldn't tell you to do it, I guess, but they might ask you to do it, and I was just wondering if they had.
No.
But when you met him, did impartiality come up?
I've known Tim for a long time, for way back, but no, I don't think we've talked. I don't talked about impartiality. I think no.
So why was he sacked briefly? Because of his anti-government tweet? Seems so. Rishi Sunak clarified that the suspension was not a matter of the government. But we have to give it to the BBC for covering the fallout, fair and square. Now the latest is that the BBC is looking to revise its impartiality and social media guidelines. Davie has apologized to, I quote, staff, contributors, presenters, and most importantly, our audiences, unquote. But the controversy has put the spotlight on Davie and BBC chairperson Richard Sharp. Both have links to the Conservative Party. Sharp has in fact donated to the party and allegedly facilitated a loan of £8 lakh to former PM Boris Johnson. Meanwhile, back home in India, Lineker found a friend in our Information and Broadcasting Minister Anurag Thakur, who was concerned about journalistic freedom at the BBC. Thakur tweeted, "Those indulging in malicious propaganda forged in concocted facts can obviously never be expected to have the moral fiber or the courage to stand up for journalistic independence. The question, of course, is if the dear minister would stand up for journalistic independence if a journalist from Doordarshan compared India's policies to that of the Nazi Germany. Doordarshan, after all, is also a public broadcaster, much like the BBC. Does Thakurji even know what Lineker tweeted? He was speaking in favor of a liberal refugee policy. Meanwhile, Thakur's party's top boss has on at least one occasion compared Bangladeshi migrants to Dimak, which means termites. और CA-NRC की chronology तो आप जानते ही हैं. I don't need to labor the point where our government stands on citizenship and refugees. Also, trigger-happy Thakurji is perhaps best known for cheering on the infamous slogan when CA-NRC protests were at their peak. You may ask, do Indian media houses have social media policies? What to post or not to post? Most of them have such guidelines, asking its staff to maintain neutrality. Shah Meera Singh was sacked by Aaj Tak for a tweet asking Modi why he did not condole Reuters journalist Danish Siddiqui's death in Afghanistan. For more on how the Indian press is dealing with journalists' private spaces, you can read Akansha's report. As far as News Laundry is concerned, we don't have any social media guidelines for journalists. But at times, reporters at least do get pulled up for their tweets. Overall, there are two schools of thought on this. The one that advocates freedom of expression, the other one is that journalists should be seen to be impartial or apolitical in their social media exploits. There are no easy answers to this debate.
The subscription model is something that keeps News Laundry afloat, but we need hundreds and thousands of people to completely transform the news ecosystem. So you pay for news, so it serves you. So click on the link with this video, subscribe to News Laundry and pay to keep news free, और गर्व से कहो मेरे खर्च पर आज़ाद है खबरें.